Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time off on this Friday to be a part of this session. I think we've been doing sessions around the track, the future of jobs, for the last 2 days, and this is the final session of that track. Just to give you a little bit of context of the initiative, Building Civil Society Organizations of the Future, I think the past few months have really impacted the world, and all kinds of things have happened that was completely unforeseen, and civil society, like other sectors, has been dealing with the repercussions of COVID-19, and there have been all kinds of conversations around scripting a new normal that we're hearing all the time. But I think it's just critical to start having some of these conversations now and try and define the actions we want to take for the next decade, because 2030 is a sustainable development goals, and we all can already see that progress towards a lot of these have got pushed back due to the pandemic. So building civil society organizations, it's a long-term, future-oriented and multi-stakeholder initiative by Arthan, with the aim of trying to bring together institutions to collectively co-create solutions for the future. This initiative is going to run from June 2020 to December 2021, and we're looking at addressing ecosystem challenges and try and really come up with some sustainable and resilient strategies for an inclusive future. We are really committed to trying to bring people from different organizations across regions, languages, gender, and really try and make this platform as diverse as possible. And we're covering multiple themes, some of which are talent, education, women's leadership, gender, urban planning, agriculture, climate action. And I think the idea is to just keep building these conversations on different aspects and move forward. We're looking at bringing together 3,000 leaders and working to help build capacity of 10,000 civil society organizations. So that's a little bit about the overall initiative. Now I'll just introduce this session. I think the idea was to really bring together a group of women leaders and founders working in the impact space, and to try and talk to them and understand from them how has it been the experience of managing teams and talent, the need to keep teams motivated in these challenging times, and just think about what they've done, the strategies they've used to move forward into this new world that we seem to be talking about and seeing. So thank you all to everyone, the speakers who've taken time out from their schedules to be with us, and we're really looking forward to the conversation today. I think instead of me doing everyone's introduction, what I'll do is I'll introduce myself, and then it'd be nice if maybe we can all just take a minute to introduce ourselves a little bit and give the audience an understanding of who we are. So my name is Mahamaya. I'm a co-founder at Arthan, and I've basically been in the space of education my entire career, and really passionate about the space, but also really looking to see how we can kind of not just have dialogue, but really translate some of that into action going forward. So that's what I'm looking at over the next year or two at least. Anita, maybe you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Firstly, thanks to Arthan for this initiative. My name is Anita Limaye. I'm the CEO of Ummeed Child Development Center. Ummeed is a 19-year-old organization that works for children with disabilities, primarily developmental disabilities, along the four verticals of clinic, training, research, and advocacy. COVID has been very interesting for our children and the families we serve, but also for us at Ummeed. And I hope to both share our experiences as well as listen to all the other panelists and their experiences. Thank you.
Thanks, Anita. Someone can go next, Hemakshi or Karanth, either of you.
Karanth, do you want to go?
Okay, I go, no problem. Hello, everyone. My name is Karanth Rauschenbach. I'm CEO and co-founder of The Blue Suit. The Blue Suit is an ethical fashion brand. I'm based here in Switzerland. I'm German, and my background is actually aerospace. So I've been working in an aerospace industry for 16 years, and then 4 years now ago, I decided to change my career and move more into the social entrepreneurship sector. I'm driven by the goal to change fashion industry from our side here in Europe and see how we can do that best. And I'm really motivated to share our experience and our journey up to now and what our learnings were out of COVID-19.
Thank you, Karen. Hemakshi?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Hemakshi. I'm a co-founder at Indian School of Democracy. What we do is we run short-term and long-term programs for young people in India who want to get into politics. So our mission is to nurture principal leaders for Indian politics by giving them the hard skills, spaces for inner transformation, and also building a community of these people across party lines who are driven by the idea of service for the country and are choosing politics as their vocation to do that. I think like we're probably one of the youngest organizations here in this room. So it's been very interesting to adapt to COVID and build a team and an organization during these times. So yeah, excited to share and listen. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone can go next. I feel like a teacher calling out names one by one.
Hi, this is Usha. I am dialing in from rural Tamil Nadu. I am the founder and CEO of Krishi Janani, an agri-tech platform. We are building a marketplace for farmers to transition to regenerative agriculture, which is somewhat above and beyond organic agriculture, and connect them to sourcing needs of big companies that want transparency and sort of quality assured materials to be delivered to their consumers. In a way, I'm happy to be here because there are about 47 participants and 10 panelists who I would not have met if not for COVID. But at the same time, it's also the time for us to realize that the work that we are doing, especially with farmers, is something so real and so on the ground that work from home and Zoom and things like that cannot fulfill what we want to do and what the farmers need to do. So in a way, I'm happy to be here sharing our experiences, and I'm looking forward to learning from the panel.
Thanks, Usha.
Right. I can go next.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Prerna, Mukharya, and I'm the founder of Outline India. We're in essence data collectors. We're a data firm that helps our partners understand what social programs is working, what's not. We help our partners quantify and qualify impact. And we mostly work across rural parts of the country. We've been around for about 8 years, and we've worked in over 10,000 villages. We recently started working on a tech platform and app that's called Track Your Metrics, wherein we're trying to automate social assessments for a lot of small not-for-profits and grassroots organizations who otherwise can't showcase that they're doing a good job or who otherwise can't demonstrate the need for funding. And at the other end, it's meant for some of the bigger funders to figure out what's happening in which part of the country, where is the fund being utilized. COVID-19 for us has been a very intense time. A lot of social programs stand disrupted, and as a consequence, a lot of evaluations or assessments stand disrupted. And as a consequence, we actually tweaked our tech platform quite a bit so that we could give it out to grassroots organizations so they could disseminate funds, so they could figure what kind of relief work is needed, so they could do survey work to figure how people are doing, what is the status of their livelihoods, physical health, mental health, and all of that. I'm very thankful to Satyam and to you, Mahamaya, for including me in this conversation. I think as a lot of startups, entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs navigate through these uncertain times, it will be crucial for us, for all of us, to discuss our successes, what's going wrong, and how we are dealing with all of that. So to know that you're not alone, I think can really help us stay strong and get through these tough times.
Thanks, Prerna. It's good to have you. Krithi, are you the only one left, right?
I am Dr. Krithi Karanth. I'm a conservation scientist, educator. I run a 36-year-old conservation NGO called Center for Wildlife Studies, which is headquartered in Bangalore but works across India. I obviously am absolutely delighted to be part of the 7-woman panel. I think that's the list. It's been very interesting, and I'm kind of looking forward to the discussion because, like Usha mentioned, ours is a field-based organization. Most of our staff work in remote wildlife areas or villages across the country. So just kind of managing teams that are completely remote and not used to technology, balanced with those who are completely tech savvy and used to living in big cities, and kind of getting through the crisis as funding is rapidly disappearing has been extremely stressful. And I just look forward to hearing how different people have coped and things we've all done to adapt and innovate. Thanks.
Great, thank you all so much. I think before we get into the discussions, I'm just going to do a quick poll to get a sense of who our audiences are, so that we can also then maybe speak a little bit specifically to the audience. So I'm just launching the poll now. So we just give like maybe a minute for people to submit their answers.
Panelists can't vote.
Panelists can't vote. So maybe another 30 seconds because we're almost there. Okay, I think I'm going to end the polling now and just share the results for us all to get a sense of the audience. Okay, so I think there is about equal division between the kind of audience we have. So there is 30% people who are looking to understand how leaders manage their teams. We have another 35% trying to learn more about leadership and team management skills, get a better understanding of organizations and opportunities. That's another 30%. And we also have a couple of people who are looking to get an understanding of, I think, different organizations in the sector. The next question is around get perspective on, I think again, very similar. There's overwhelming 62% want to understand about managing teams and talent. I think that is predominantly one of the big ones. And of course, there is another one, which is learning and experiences of women leaders in impact. So I think a couple of these are big ones. And there is how to grow my career in the social impact sector. So have you all had a chance to scroll through this? I'll just stop sharing the results and we can get on with the conversation. Okay. Okay, so I think since one of the key areas has been around managing teams and talent, and that was part of the conversations we were going to be having in any case, maybe we can just begin with just the challenges that we have, that you faced in the last couple of months, just in terms of walking that line between managing motivation and productivity, and with so many different kinds of organizations out there and different kinds of teams, how have you kind of navigated some of those and some strategies that you've kind of used around that? So I don't know, Karen or Krithi, would you like to take it up, or anyone actually? This is, I think I'm wanted to be more like a conversation and not me asking everyone one by one, because that's really making me feel like a principal.
So I think Mahamaya, from CWS's experience, we are about 60 people. 2/3 of the organization is based in remote parts of India, near villages or inside around them, and about 1/3 is on the in cities. And it was a very strange experience because the part that involved research and media and outreach, people were working from home 2 days a week anyway. So having to go into a lockdown or switching to fewer days work from home was absolutely smooth transition. People were already doing it and very highly productive. And so it wasn't a hard shift for them. But we had field teams who had finished work, wrapped up work, got stuck in remote parts of Maharashtra, remote parts of Karnataka. So first priority was to get people home safely. And as the lockdown and transport disappeared, it got harder and harder to do. And of course, a lot of these guys don't really use technology beyond a mobile phone. And so, I mean, first, once we got them home safe and everybody was quarantined and fine, the thing was just getting them back up to use, train them. But I think it's, people have gotten closer. They've just learned to work as teams online, and we were flexible. You can't expect people who don't have access to a computer or good internet connectivity to put in 8-hour work days. It just doesn't make sense. So we kind of tried to put and give them activities as teams that they could do without really hard deadlines on things. And I think that's worked. I think it's also brought a lot of people to closer together, because people stuck in different parts of India assume that we just talk to the Bangalore office, we don't talk to each other. Now everybody's talking to each other. So I think that's helped as well. So we're a closer organization because of this now.
Yeah, no, I think that is something that I've seen as well. I think in a lot of aspects, one tends to, like you said, just, talk to the person one needs to talk to for the particular work. But some of this has kind of made conversations, broken some of those silos that were very work-centric, and build the organization slightly stronger. So yeah, that's a good point. Anyone else want to share your experiences, thoughts, strategies?
I think I'd like to put or step onto the part that you said that bringing people together, or maybe the conversation has changed in between an organization. I mean, we are a small startup, so it's just my co-founder and I, but we are in a network of clients and suppliers that we have to manage. And I think one most important thing for me was really to keep the connection and make sure how are they doing, what are our suppliers doing? They're in Italy, which was the worst basically affected country in Europe. And so the first thing we had to manage is make sure how are our suppliers, are they okay, can they survive, make sure that there's no open invoices, so very operational stuff. And then towards the clients, I mean, all the shops were closed, so no orders, no reorders. Basically, our revenue going down. And so we decided to use the chance of this COVID crisis to work on our strategy and to think about what's important for us for the next couple of years. So really to think long-term, also to keep the motivation. And one thing that helped me was basically linking to people, like to a network of people that I haven't been in touch with so much. So I started to talk to different people I normally do because of using Zoom and all this kind of stuff. All of a sudden there were webinars from the Think School where I used to go, and I realized that was a huge resource of knowledge and people to share experience, and that really helped me going through this time and to create new ideas and new solutions that I would not come up myself. But just by having conversations with different people, like from the social entrepreneurship background or from old friends, you know, that you would normally not tap into, really helped me to just reflect and to think about what's really important. So it formed like a different kind of conversation that I didn't have before COVID.
Sorry, I was on mute. No, thanks, Karen. That's an interesting way of also looking at it, and just understanding that one, like at some level, the networks are broadening because one is making effort to go out of the immediate ones that we all get familiar with. So that's really good. Anyone else or
yeah? I'll very quickly pitch in to say, I think you pointed out motivation and productivity, but I think 2 weeks into the lockdown, we realized that we talk about nurturing principal leaders in our organization, but the migrant crisis began, and we questioned that, are we doing anything about the current crisis? Though our work demands like creating programs, working with people to nurture leadership. But I think the question that we immediately kind of confronted was that, are we doing anything about the current crisis? If yes, what can we do? If no, why not? And what are the resources available to us? So just asking that very immediate question and talking about it in the team really, really helped, while acknowledging that we're such a small team and we have a program coming up and we can't really leave all of that and address the immediate crisis, but just giving space for each team member to voice what is it that they really want to do to respond to the current crisis around them, I think was really important and set the motivation, tone, and goal for, I think, entire lockdown period that we had.
I think sometimes one forgets that this is not a normal situation, in the sense that it's not just that you're locked down at home, but there's just so much stuff going on outside that can be really disheartening and upsetting. And so really to acknowledge some of that and let people kind of do what they want to or feel passionate about to kind of help that situation. So that's, I think, a great way to just keep people engaged and just also feel like they're contributing in some way beyond just business as usual. So that's, yeah, thanks.
I think I have something that I'll jump off or what Hemakshi just said. It's like to find the purpose and to find the motivation. I think it was initially really, really hard because it's also, everyone is confused, what is the lockdown, what is open, what is not, what is allowed, what is not. Agriculture is an essential service that was supposed to be open. But then the rules were being, implemented by people on the ground who may or may not know all the intricacies of what is supposed to go and what is not supposed to go. So for us, after that initial shock was over, I think what helped us deal with COVID as a crisis is we didn't have one. We started an emergency helpline for farmers. They started calling in with all sorts of issues and we could help solve, because some of them were transport problems, some of them were, this particular checkpoint is not letting me through. So it was not only giving us sort of something to do to address the crisis, it was also giving us something that there's a concrete achievement that we can say, okay, we are doing something for our customers, the farmers, in a way that's making an impact in their lives. Right? Not the way we had originally planned, of course, but still we are doing something. So that sort of helped the team pull together and say, okay, there's a crisis. We are all in a shock. No one knows what we are doing. But at the same time, we are making our little effort, a small effort, which joins us together and as a team gives us a purpose. Right? I think all of us have some purpose that we are all running organizations in, and this crisis is universal. So there is something all of us can do, a small something that all of us can do, whether it's helping migrants or whether it's helping farmers get the truck through the checkpoint, right? Minor, small, but it's a big thing for the farmer and for someone who managed to make that happen, right? So small successes in the middle of crisis is always good for motivation.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. I think just maybe taking this as a cue to kind of just talk about a little bit about the whole aspect of mental well-being, and when we talk about motivation, that how you're feeling mentally plays a big role in, you know, how you deal with a crisis as well. So we interesting to hear, you know, some of the things that you are doing or have done or plan to do going forward, just to, you know, keep that aspect also as central as a lot of the other work that's happening. So I don't know, Anita, if you would like to maybe share something here.
Yeah, I'll be happy to, because I think I think all of us have sort of responded right to the situation. And I'm building on what Usha said, and I was thinking about, like, you know, 3 things that probably individuals and organizations have gone through. The first step was acceptance that, you know, this is happening and this is here to stay for a while. The second was adapting to the situation and saying, okay, what can we do in this sort of temporary new normal? And there are so many things that we have learned in that adaptation phase. I think that some of those will be adopted. So I would think that the third phase is adopting what out of this is here to stay. So Ummeed works with children with disabilities, like I said, and their families. And it was really hard in the beginning, right? Because we are center-based, we provide direct service delivery, and we do training. And so after the initial shock had settled down, you know, we all started brainstorming on what can we do now from here. And we have a team, a mental health team in the organization, because we provide that support to our children and families. So I think being aware of how staff mental health is going and constantly responding to it is something that we end up doing just inherently. There were little things we tried to do. For example, there were certain routines, you know, there was a lot of disruption happening out there. None of us knew how long this was going to last and what all was going to change. So there were certain routines we tried to follow. Every Thursday the team meets, we continued those meetings on Zoom. And out of 90 people in the organization, we have at least 70 to 75 across all levels in the organization who join the meeting. One of our colleagues sends an email every day to every other day on, you know, a children's book and a poetry, so that there is something nice that we are reading every day. And it's funny because you read children's books and you go back to your childhood, and usually those are happy memories. So then, you know, you can relate to that. We've been transparent with these staff members about what's going on, decisions we are taking, so that, you know, they also know that, you know, they know what's going on, and it's not just some team somewhere that's figuring things out, but it's happening in some corner of the organization. And then for our children and families who already don't have access to leisure, and now they are dealing with all of this stress, we've been doing online fun clubs and family support groups, which have actually, they've been so grateful, like not just for the individual phone calls to say, how are you doing, but also these opportunities to interact with each other and, you know, then be a support system to each other. So I think it's really important to look out for our own mental health, because unless we are feeling okay, it's hard to then sort of be in that upbeat, positive mode for the people we service. Yeah, so I think that's my 2 bits around, you know, mental health and things that we've done at least.
No, thanks. And I was actually going to come to you, Prerna, because I think as people, I mean, there are 2 levels, right? As someone who's leading an organization, you have the stress of running the organization, looking after your people, still staying true to your mission, kind of looking at how to make your organization sustain through this period. So, you know, it's hard to do that and still stay upbeat. So maybe you'd like to kind of talk about how you dealt with it. And
my response could be a long format article, Mahamaya. I could go on talking about it. In fact, I think my response has been, you know, I can split it by the type of person I'm talking about. So if I'm talking about my field staff, no words minced, it's been hard on them, right? We had field missions for the next 6 months. Now about 100, 120 people are sitting at home. And of course, we offered some financial aid, but by no means can I compensate them for the next 6 months of work that they will not do. It's been hard. It's been very hard. And so, of course, you know, I have some of my permanent staff call up my field staff and part-time staff. And we've received requests from them saying that, Madam, COVID chodiye, we're ready to go to work. And I have to tell them, no, you know, that's not something we can do, but maybe there's some financial assistance we can offer. And so it's a lot of one-on-one motivation calls that I've had to do, messages I've received at midnight, phone calls in the morning, and I've had to repeat a lot of things to people. And perhaps by the end of a lot of these conversations, I'm mopey, I'm depressed. So I remember March made, much like I think what Krithi said, when I had to, we had 2 field missions on in 3 different states. And overnight, I had to pull out about 70 people, including my researchers. So we scrambled to figure out bus tickets, train tickets, flight tickets. And overnight, the government said no flights, no international flights. And people were suddenly scared. And there was this fear of unknown. So there were a lot of these conversations I had. And I had to say, listen, we'll be fine. But no, I did not know if we would be fine. So that's one. Second is I had some young millennials working with me, and no, they could not deal with the stress. So I had some youngsters quitting on the organization saying, Prerna, I think we'll all be working from home. I don't anticipate a lot of work. So I want to chill for the next 2 months and sit at home and paint. So I said, do you want to go on a sabbatical? One of them said yes, 2 of them said no. So, that's a different response for someone else. Then some of my own permanent researchers, a lot of these are young professionals, 28, 30 years old, whose permanent location is elsewhere. So they've all been stuck in Delhi. Some of them want to go back home, but then they have institutional quarantine, be it in Assam or Bengal, and no, they can't head back. So they're stuck in their respective apartments with some roommate. Some of these kids were also living in containment zones, so they didn't know what to do. And, there was a lot of navigation around and frustration around dealing with video calls, webinars. It's been exhausting, to be honest. And I have often found myself guessing if we should do video calls. I think this has been our first insight into how your house looks or what your backdrop looks like, right? And is the paint chipped on your wall? Or what is the quality of your video? And I think by now I know what night suits all my colleagues wear, because in the morning, we get to see everybody. So it's been, in a way, I think we've all become closer. It's become more personal. And now when I pick up the phone and ask someone, how are you, Mahamaya? I actually mean to ask them, how are you doing? Tell me, did you get to buy your groceries? And there have obviously, it's been going on for 3.5 months. So there were spurts when somebody got the flu, but simply because they coughed a little, their parents started wondering, and they started wondering if they were actually, getting symptoms of COVID-19. And I told them that, listen, I have some friends who run a hospital. So God forbid something goes wrong, I'll get a pass. I'll come pick you up. We'll get through this. I've got your back. So no, it's not been easy. So unlike what Anita said, I think for me, the phases have been anticipation. So the months of March and April were like, oh, it's going to be okay, 10 days. I'm going to take the metro, go back to work. Oh no, 2020 is not lost on us yet. Oh, I'm sure someone will come up with a vaccine. Oh, sure, it's not as bad. So I think March and April were anticipation and lots of, nights of not having to go to sleep. And there was an initial euphoria around, oh, metro nahi leni padegi, ghar se kaam karenge, a lot of fun, etc. Then I think May was about coping with things. So now I'm home. Now I know this is my life. I'm perhaps just going to be home for the next couple of months. Maybe there will be no party. Maybe I will not meet my friends. Maybe I will not be able to change my job. Maybe I will not get a Diwali bonus this year. I'm also worried about my company, about my company's finances. So that happened. And I think the third phase is now perhaps June, July, wherein we've all come to terms with the reality of it, wherein we're saying, listen, 2020 can perhaps be year 0, no schools, no board exams, fewer projects, but this is a tough time for everybody. So we're not the only one dealing with how bad it is or how tough it is, but we'll all come out of it. And so my message to my team is, listen, as a field organization, as a data collection organization, it's been harsh, but once all of this will be behind us, we'll have to go out there and help measure all that went wrong, help evaluate how to fix things, and we'll be back on top. We just have to get through this with a lot of patience, and perhaps I think empathy has a newfound meaning in all our lives. I think we've all started to show a lot of care for any and everybody around us. And I think that's perhaps a positive externality.
Yeah, no, I think the part about just the different stages, which is something I think even Anita spoke about, and just responses to that has been something that I've felt myself, and I think I've seen people around me kind of go through those stages as well. And definitely the empathy part, I really do hope that it's something that's here to stay even beyond these 3, 4, or 5 months of being cooped up and locked up. But it'd be great if that's something that kind of is long-term takeaway from this. We were talking about the financial aspect, and I think in my conversations, Krithi, you've spoken about that being really challenging for an area that you were working in specifically, because everything getting diverted towards COVID, and suddenly the environment and wildlife does not seem to a lot of people as being that critical. So what are some of the things that you've done in terms of just trying to bring keep that part going and just continue and build up the reserves going forward?
So I think the first thing, I mean, I'm somebody who loves to plan no end, right? So March 22nd, I was looking at our financial runway and trying to figure out how far we can go. Can we go a year? Is it 6 months? Is it 3 months? Once I figured out we can go a year, I was able to start to breathe. Unfortunately, we've had to let some people go.
I think
some people choosing to leave. I mean, COVID came from people hunting wildlife in China, and COVID can emerge from India. The connection between zoonotic diseases and wildlife is very, very obvious to those of us who work in the environment field. It's given us an amazing opportunity to look at our work, which is sort of the interface between people and wildlife. How do you keep people safe? And we've very heavily focused on human-wildlife conflict and tourism and other issues. Now we're trying to we've designed and developed an entire new program to look at wildlife-related diseases that get transmitted from people to animals and animals to people. So not just COVID-19, but rabies, which everybody knows, rinderpest. There's a Casanur forest disease in Karnataka. So we've designed an entire program. We've written 26 proposals in the last 3 months to try and get that new program funded. I think we're very close on one. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed. But if that works, we have a whole new program that we wouldn't have done had not COVID happened. So my thing is, you can't pivot an entire organization. Like Usha said, Anita said, the core of us is the same. The mission is still wildlife and wild places. But COVID-19 is so directly related to wildlife that we're hoping to go down a whole new exciting adventure. And I think in contrast to a lot of other people here, Karnataka and Bangalore have not as badly been hit. So we slowly started opening our offices in mid-May. I go in 2-3 days a week. We have a rotational system. So that feeling of cooped up, unfortunately, we're not as bad off as I think most other people on this call. So I don't feel cooped up anymore. It's sort of measured who comes in, when they come in, how do you keep them safe, and how do you juggle teams so that, because this is something you guys will have to do 2-3 months down the line, or a month down the line, hopefully. But we're already in that opening up phase. And I think it's mentally just made my spirits fly. The first day I went to the office, there were just 2 of us, but I just sat on my desk and I said, I used to love working from home. Now I love working from the office. It's flipped.
No, thanks a lot, Krithi. I think just what you talked about, just persistently writing proposals and just single-mindedly going after trying to, create avenues and opportunities from what could really come out, which still stayed within the gamut of what your organization really does. So I think innovation definitely I'm seeing as being something in addition to empathy that is really coming out from different sources and different sectors. And just taking discussion further, Karen, I bring my next question is to you, because like Krithi spoke, Bangalore being slightly more advanced in terms of, you know, they started opening up a little before and things are pretty much looking like some semblance of normalcy in terms of movement. I think where you are is even further further ahead in terms of just the context and how things are. So what does it look like over there? And I know in terms of financials, you said that orders get cancelled, clients are not, you know, repeating orders and stuff like that. And I think you're a social business in this space, so it's interesting to kind of hear from you how that looks like.
Yeah, so the situation here in Switzerland or in Europe has changed a lot. We are almost back to normal in the sense of that we can go outside, we can go to the office, we can move around freely, travel again. And what we see, or basically, I think what will stay from all this time is a more flexible workspace. So people are really will change the way and not always go to the office every day and are stuck in traffic jams. I think there's a big rethink going on. Environmentally, also the way you travel, so lots of biking and less car and public transport. So people are back to going outside, walking, hiking, biking, and rediscovering this, which is really important. Big cities have basically, they call it pop-up bikeways. So they stopped streets and just made roads for bikes, which is like even in Germany, in the city of Stuttgart, which is car city #1, they did that, and that's like a revolution. So you see that there are some positive things that will maintain. I think in terms of business for us, up to now, all of the clients are still there. So none of the shops have closed, which is good. But I think that we will only see the big consequences in the second half of the year, because now they're still okay. They had clients, and we work with a lot of stores that are focused on organic, fair clothing, and so they have clients which are very much focused on that and very how do you say that, trusting clients that don't run away easily. And I think they have been very supportive to a lot of shops. There have been many initiatives where like support your local store, support local brands, support small brands. And now we have actually formed an association with 63 ethical labels here in Switzerland. And we have pooled together all our powers to to source together, to have a platform together. So all of a sudden, we see that bringing different organizations together brings us much more force, and then also economically room to negotiate. And so that's what we are doing. Really on more like the short-term view, we said, okay, we use the time also to write proposals. So I'm with you, Prerna. Writing proposals can be annoying, but it's also good to think about what you really want to do and what are other more innovative things you can do, and moving into the direction of regenerative clothing, circular topics in the aim of textile industry. So we are very close to get the final answer. It's been a very big program that we want to run together with other small brands to make them focus and change their sourcing towards regenerative fabrics, and really change the way we do clothing, do fashion.
No, that's really interesting. I think, sorry, you were still speaking.
I'm finished.
No, I was just saying collaboration seems to also be more than just using it as a term, which I think we've been doing for years, but I'm actually seeing more concrete collaborations with actual, definitive actions coming out as well in this time. And I think that's something which will also be great to kind of see going forward, because, there's no point reinventing the wheel when there are already so many people doing such great stuff. What's the way that one can actually kind of pool together and, do stuff together?
Yeah. But I think it needed this sort of twist and this sort of situation for people to actually understand, hey, let's work together and really find a mutual understanding and see what are the problems we all have. And it takes because I mean, you need to trust in the others, and you know, a lot of them are competition. I could see it like this, but because you are fighting for the same long-term goal, it really helps you. And with this crisis, it basically brings you closer together. But I think it needed that to really think about collaboration and not just talk about it.
No, I think, thank you. There's a lot that's come out from what we've talked about in terms of hopeful stuff, and also some of the challenges that I think we all continue to face. I think what I'll do is try and maybe enter into a different space, because I think a lot of the questions I'm seeing, and also from the poll, people are really interested in understanding your journeys as women in the impact space. So specifically talking about gender and experiences of that as leaders. So I think I will just start off with one of the questions that actually come up on this, which talks about just what kind of experiences have you faced as being, in setting up organizations or leading large teams, or just, in generally being in the space as women. Who anyone could kind of take that question.
Start.
Yeah.
So like I shared earlier, Indian School of Democracy works in the political domain, and we try to reclaim the word politics, one, by claiming that it can be cleaned up, but we're also expanding the definition to say electoral politics is one kind, the second is politics of organizing, and the third is politics of ideas. And I think one of the biggest blows for me when I started was that I was so often the only woman in rooms when I was approaching political parties, when I was doing focus group discussions with booth workers, when I was working on a women's campaign. She and I were the only two women in like a team of 300 people. And that started becoming so normal that I was changing as a person. But luckily I had a support system which was constantly asking me how I was doing, how I was feeling about being a woman entrepreneur in a political space, as a first thing. And I think the second thing that really helped was having some principles on what we really wanted to create, especially around gender, because we don't see women in political spaces or public spaces as often. Our parliament or state assemblies being some of those examples. I think we were committed to saying at least 50% of our participants will be women. And having that really put things in perspective, the way I was engaging with people in conversations, the questions I was asking in the first place to say, what are the entry barriers, but then what are the entry barriers for women particularly. I think the third thing, and I think all the women here probably have stories about it, is the fundraising aspect of being a woman entrepreneur. Just the way you are looked at, the questions that you're asked, how much extra work you need to do to prove your credibility in the technical aspects of things, really, really goes for a toss. Also, I'm young. I look younger than I am. I'm a woman in political spaces. So the number of questions, yes, and my co-founder was in the US till 2 months ago. So I used to go for a lot of, yes, it's great that you're there, but who else is doing this with you? I think like that question, and then the self-doubt that can creep in if you're not really prepared for that. So I think these are realities, but that, at least for me now that I'm a little about that curve, like it's just like strengthening the belief for why I want to do what I want to do. But I want to also acknowledge the privilege I have in terms of the education, the support system, the networks that I have access to, where I can at least talk about these things, process it. Spaces like this, right? Like where there's a support system. So I think the learning I have for women who want to get into entrepreneurship is just please build a support system for yourself, where you can talk about these challenges that come up.
No, thanks. Yeah, I think, like you said, it's problems that everyone has faced in different spaces, and I think it becomes especially hard when you're also trying to lead an organization. Usha, I would like to add something to this, maybe also in terms of just the communities that you work with, and the effect that some of this has in terms of the women farmers, many of whom often don't even get the recognition that men do be great to hear from you.
So like the most important thing for me personally is to actually figure out when the gender bias is intentional versus when it is unintentional, right? Intentional bias you have to fight in one way. Unintentional bias you have to fight in another way, sort of try to solve it in another way. So for the work that we are doing, much of it is unintentional bias, where when you bring attention to it, then people start including more women farmers. Or so for us, we are a small team, but majority women. That also helps, right? So these are intentional decisions you can make to sort of come up with a solution where if they see more women when we do meetings, then more women farmers feel comfortable coming to the meeting. If they see women on the stage, sometimes you see women farmers being addressed by a whole platoon of men on the stage and women all down on the as participants, right? So we make sure that we don't make any unintentional mistakes that give sometimes the wrong message, right? And for us, the most important part, because I also want to include someone had asked a question about work-life balance in the Q&A, where when you have majority women and when you have a crisis like this, to become a little bit conscious of the fact that men in our team can, say I'm working and shut their doors and be working from home. Whereas women are working, they are in a meeting, they are on a call, we are all on a Zoom conference and somebody wants them to come help them with the cooking. So those are unavoidable. And how do you even address some of those things? For us, we have, this is again something you work with your teams, you work with men and women in your teams to say, how do we deal with this? Say there are set dates and set times when we are working. We are not the ones yelling at our team, but I have told my team members they should tell people, family members, that they are going to get yelled at by their boss, right? It's a good excuse for them to use to come and say, shut the door. So things like that, where you are at least aware of some of the issues and take steps to address some of those issues. Those are the ways that it has helped. Again, when there are intentional biases, then no holds barred. It's a fight. Okay, let's just have it. So those are somewhat of the two ways to deal with the biases. Yes, there are biases. There's no two way about it. You just have to figure out how you're going to deal with
it. Anyone else? Anita, sorry, Karen, were you saying something?
Yeah, because what Hemakshi mentioned with support system, I think that's really important, or it is also very important for me. Like I have a network of other women I admire or I like to talk to when I have a question, and I just check how they're doing, what they think about it, sort of to bounce ideas or if I'm in doubt. And I think that's extremely important to have that, to have somebody to talk to, and that supports your idea and it stands behind you. And it can be one person, can be many, but I think that's for me it was the most important thing to have.
Thanks, Karen. We have the usual problem of being on mute. Anita, you were saying something, I think.
Yeah. I think just to add to what everyone has said, I think most social sector organizations are predominantly women, right? So Ummeed, for example, is 90% women. And I think the reality is also that, unfortunately, the burden of caregiving, whether it's for young children or for the elderly at home, and this is not true only for India, I think it's global, tends to fall on women. So I think it has been hard to balance everything that one needs to do at home when the spouse is out there working, and managing children's education and all of that has been hard. And then in order to give flexibility to the women staff of Ummeed, we've said, work when it's possible for you. So somebody starts working late or somebody starts working early because that's what works in their schedule. But all of these are pulls and pushes that the organization is then dealing with, right? Because if somebody is starting early, then somebody else is getting emails early, and then you have to figure out, okay, when do I respond to this or don't? Um, and so I think it's been very hard for the senior team at Ummeed, which is also predominantly women, because besides taking care of home and responsibilities at home, domestic work, employee morale, keeping up our own morale, innovating, donor management, partnership management, it's just so many balls in the air. I think what we've tried to do is, I think what everyone said, be a support system at least to each other, talk about how we are feeling, be willing to listen to this empathetically, and then sort of, see how we can keep nudging each other forward. I think some of this is real and it's going to take a long time to change. So I really like the way Usha framed it in terms of, what are intentional and what are unintentional biases, and sort of, I think, just how can you cope with it in the here and now, and how do you eventually change some of these as well?
Thanks, Anita. That was very useful, I think. And I don't know, Prerna, would you like to maybe add something based on your experiences?
So I think I have some of the numbers that Anita, some of the comments she made. I have the numbers for it. So apparently, women are spending 5x the amount of time on childcare now, about 3.5x the amount of time they originally did on household chores, and are about 2x more likely to lose their jobs as a consequence of the crisis. So COVID-19 is real. I think we're going to see a big jump in teenage pregnancies. We're already familiar with the spike in numbers across the world, not just developing countries, but developed countries as well, in terms of domestic violence and abuse. So these are all hard facts. Then another hard fact is that about 70% of healthcare workers, frontline workers, are actually women. But there's only about 25% women who take up positions of leadership, right? So it's quite counterintuitive that if you have 70%, as a gender, if it's all coming from women, and healthcare is so crucial right now, we should perhaps make up for a bigger percentage of the pool that's taking decisions. I think given the fact that a lot of us work in the field, I know that when I go to the field, a lot of people, out of respect, they don't know that they can call me madam. A lot of them call me sir, and I don't even correct them. So it's very commonplace for somebody from a small town or village to just refer to you as sir, and I play along, right? It's how they show respect. I think also when it comes to technology, I am fairly aware of my own limitations. So I regret it, but I don't code, but I'm trying to run a tech project. And when I talk to my coders, I sometimes say it to them in Hindi that agar main ye button dabaungi to isse kya hoga? I translate it as, if I hit this button, what converts to what? So can you break it down and give it to me in layman's terms, right? So I think as women, we sometimes, we've been programmed to not share our insecurities on a lot of levels, which I agree with. But I think on certain occasions, it's also okay to be vulnerable and say that, listen, I don't know this. I could use your help. This is a tough time. Can you guide me on what to do next? I know of two female founders, coincidentally, from the social sector, and I've called them up at different points to ask if they are extending salary cuts, if they've fired people, if they are getting projects, what the next 6 months look like. Are they traveling? Are they going to office? Are they running offices on a rotation basis? And I, for instance, I've not opened up my office just yet. And I don't even have any plans of opening up my office yet, because I can't ask people to take cabs every day and come by. It's just not very feasible. But I think when it's about reaching out for help or for support, whether it's about business or asking for work or just emotional support, gender won't play a role. So it doesn't matter whether it's a male friend or a female friend or a sibling or someone else. But I think these are times when all of us are comfortable saying that, listen, not everything is okay. No, we're not okay. We're all coping, but we'll all get through it. I think those are my 2 cents on it.
Thanks, Prerna. I think we have one more question that's come up around this subject, and basically it's from Sachdev Ramakrishna, and he's asking, do women leaders somehow naturally lead entities better, given their natural sense of empathy and nurturing? It's an interesting question. I wonder if someone would like to kind of take it.
I mean, I'll start. I don't know the answer to that. I just think that men leaders and women leaders brings different strengths to the table. Of us has a little of the other element in us, right? So it's very hard to say. I do think leadership styles are different. I think I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I think it is a tough question, because I don't necessarily feel that leadership is gendered so much in that sense. It's just that I think there are that many more men who are leaders than women, and so just the population of leaders who are male is just much higher, and so the opportunities for them to also do stuff that's not particularly so great is also, you kind of have a larger canvas, right, to kind of fail and pick from. But anyone else, Krithi or Karen or Hemakshi?
Yeah, I think my thoughts around this are, I think there's no better or worse, but maybe there are situations or processes where I think women are, I would say, like in an innovation process or a brainstorming process, maybe women are more inclusive, asking, bringing people to the table. Whereas if it's a very critical situation in a crisis, a very autocratic leadership style, saying we do this, that now, could be maybe a more male-oriented leadership style and very useful in the situation. So I think the mix is actually what makes it interesting. But I think there are, like you say, threats or like themes that are maybe more easy for women than for men, and the other way around.
Thanks, Karen.
If I can add. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. So if I can just add to that and change the question a little bit, I feel like it's not about male leaders versus female leaders. It's about empathy and nurturing being considered a leadership quality, right? We are strong, we are this, we are that. We naturally think of that as a leadership quality, whereas empathy and nurturing, a man may have it, a woman may have it, but we automatically think of it as a soft skill that's not leadership quality, right? So for us, I think if we want to change the way leadership is perceived, empathy and nurturing should become an integral part of any leadership. Not women leaders or female leaders should have more empathy or automatically have more empathy. Because it leads to women getting leadership roles and trying to become imitation of male leaders and strong, and I take decisions and I don't have much empathy, and especially in the tech field. I am from the software development sector in agriculture sector now, and where lots of things are female leaders get to a certain level and then they try to lose all the qualities or supposed qualities. So I think we should include empathy and nurturing as part of the leadership quality.
I'd like to go, I feel very passionately about this in a way that it's taken me a while to arrive at where I am, and I'm sure there's so much thinking that I need to do on this. But I feel like we need more women leaders, and there's no doubt about that, right? We are at least 50% of the population, and we need 50% leaders in positions that matter, in decision-making positions. But I feel like just the quality of empathy and nurture being imposed on women can be binding for both men and women. And hence what Usha said really matters. I think these are qualities that all leaders should have. But by associating the qualities of nurture and care just to women, what happens is we are pushing women leaders to take non-technical roles, to take HR roles, to ask for human resource and education ministry and not for the finance or defense ministry, right? So I think by this imposition of values, which seem amazing values to have as a human being, but imposing or associating them with just one gender is also limiting for so many people. And I think personally as an entrepreneur, I've struggled with this, because as a person, I don't associate compassion or empathy as my top values. And I felt like I was expected to behave that way. And it's not because I'm socialized into certain gender identity. I am very privileged. So I was allowed to explore. I am allowed to explore a lot of qualities about me. But I felt like, oh my God, am I a misfit because I'm not as empathetic? I'm a taskmaster. Is there something wrong with me? Am I supposed to lead in a different way? So I think and like, again, because of the support system, I was able to get beyond it. But I do feel like, I think we need to have a conversation about having women in leadership positions, because they deserve to be that, without associating a certain set of values with women leadership or even male leadership, because it's like patriarchy. Men suffer because of patriarchy as well. So yeah, that's something that I want to say.
Thanks, Hemakshi. I think that was, very well put. And I think both the points that you and Usha made are really relevant for us going forward. Krithi, you wanted to say something, and also because I think the domain you're in.
Well, they've both been.
They've covered it. Sorry, are you saying something?
They've both been so eloquent. I was saying, I think Usha she hit the nail on the head, and so eloquently on how we should or shouldn't attribute values to gender. And I fully agree with Hemakshi. I don't think empathy is one of my highest qualities, probably among my most weakest points, right? And I come from a profession which used to be 99% male dominated in my dad's generation. My generation probably still, maybe 20-30% women. And so you're out in the field, you're walking in the jungle, you have to prove that you're not just mentally tough, but you're physically tough and technically tougher than all the guys. And so the kind of women we often attract are people who've gone through a lot of this their whole life, trying to convince their parents, why the hell do you want to run around in the jungle? It doesn't make sense, right? So they've in some ways self-selected into this set of people, male or female, who can survive their family pressures and cultural pressures to do a profession that doesn't pay very well and is most of the time really tough, and they're absolutely in it because they love it. And so what I found it very hard through my life, including when I had, I chose to have a baby when I was doing my PhD, 13 years ago, and in the US, and I took so much flack for that. In a university at Duke, which is one of the top universities in the world, and I was seen as a PhD student who wouldn't finish, who walked away, and I still finished faster than everybody else and published more than everybody else, right? So I've seen it from the wildlife angle, I've seen it from the academic angle, and I kind of promised myself that if I ever got to a leadership position, I started running CWS about 18 months ago, that we would pick extraordinary people regardless of male or female. What has coincidentally happened is that 70% of our hires have been women. It was not by choice. It was just the applicants who came were amazing young women. And so I think we're now gender balanced, 50% men, 50% women. And I think look at strength and look at empathy, both as qualities that both men and women should possess. And I don't want to be perceived as a softie because I'm a woman either, right? So you're constantly juggling this stuff.
Yeah, no, thanks, Krithi. So if no one has anything to add on this particular subject, I think what I'm going to do is there are certain questions that audience have specifically asked of different panelists. So maybe I can pick some of those up, and some of them are general questions that anyone can answer. One question is for Karen, which is around just understanding if you're able to premium price your products, given that your clothing helps save the planet. Do you find it hard to get consumers who are appreciative or different from the norm?
Very good question. Very good question. I think there are consumers here in Europe that are willing to pay more, but they're so niche that it's hard to base your business on that. So, well, from the experience that we have now, I think the first decision point for a client is if they like the design, if they like the product, and then if it's also ethical or well done, then yeah, it's an additional aspect. But I think it is very hard to ask for a premium price because it's made fair and ecological.
Thanks, Karen. I hope that answered the question. I think there's a question for generally anyone who'd like to answer it around collaboration in the social impact space in India and why we don't see more instances of it. What could be the reason, and can we expect that to happen more going forward? So if someone has either experienced it in terms of collaborating themselves or seen instances or examples, then be great to maybe share.
I can quickly jump in, Mahamaya. So I think, yes, perhaps cases of collab in the social sector are maybe few and far in between, but I think COVID-19 has changed some of our thinking around that. In the dev sector, we also tend to compete with each other quite a bit for that same body of funding, for that same project with the UNs of the world, for that same implementation project. So, it can be tricky, but I think in the last couple of months, as an organization, we've collaborated with other researchers. We've used their resource to do some telephonic surveys. We've lent our field staff to other people in certain pockets of the country so that they could still collect data off the ground. And this is a district where it was still doable. We've also shared our tech for free with some foundations. And they've gotten back with certain feedback, or they're looking to build something similar on their own. I think maybe dev sector organizations tend to make lesser noise. We're a little bit calmer and more subdued, and we don't have marketing budgets of the orders of what other startups or other big organizations do. So we tend to hear a little bit lesser about some of these collaborative opportunities. But in fact, I'll take a very specific example. Not a lot of people know this, but even Arogya Setu, for all its good and all its misdemeanors, drew in coders from a lot of startups and was built in a time span of 15 to 17 days. And they had about 50 million downloads in 14 days. So, that is a case for the greater good of organizations, startups coming together for a higher purpose.
Thanks, Prerna. I'm going to go to, sorry, if anyone else would have wanted to add something to this. I mean, it was a general question for everyone. But otherwise, I would go to a question which again is specifically directed towards Krithi, but I think is something that we could all kind of talk about because it's something that is forward-looking in that sense. And it says, how do you inspire young people on your team for such a long-term out-there purpose, such as wildlife conservation? So Krithi, maybe you want to answer that, and then we can kind of, because I think the social impact space is one such space where you see impact so much later than when you actually do make the effort. So maybe everyone could share their thoughts as well after you.
So I think fundamentally the kind of people we attract are unusual oddballs anyway, who deeply care and are going to stay in this for life, regardless of COVID or no COVID. With the scientists, I think what has helped us, I think what's kept people inspired is, of course, you want to do cutting edge science and you want to publish in the best journals. So being a co-author on a paper is a big deal. And it's something I've kind of mentored 200 people, and I have 200 young co-authors in the last decade in India, right? So that's been straightforward. I think people who are in the field, what has been, people like to silo themselves. They like to say either I do research or I do conservation or I do education. And very few people, at least with the younger generation, it's been a push saying work with the other 4 sort of broad verticals that we have. And I kind of force people to do it, and there's a lot of resistance. So why should I write a blog? Why should I host a webinar or a bunch of these kind of things? But now they see the value in it, because you get diverse opinions, you build deep friendships because you're very different, and I think you learn a lot from each other. So initially there's a lot of resistance saying, I'm a scientist, I don't do conservation, or I don't do education, or why should I write anything or make a film about something? And so it's different levers, but I think giving creative space, giving collaborative space, and when people come running back to me, I'm like, no, you guys figure it out, and then get to a point where then have a discussion, but I'm not going to spoon feed you. And so people who can't think on their own drop off very, very quickly. So the dropout rate is also high, because you have to be a self-motivated, passionate, driven individual. And if you expect at 22 or 32 or 35 that somebody from the top is going to keep telling you, you're not going to survive in this field. There's too many odds stacked against you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Krithi. And I think I can just go to Hemakshi, because I think there was a question around how do you inspire people towards a subject like politics, because I think over the years it's become a term that's become so negative somehow, which is it's not meant to be. So how has that been as something that you're trying to build into? How do you change that perception?
Yeah, I attempted to answer that in chat, and this is something we speak about a lot. So I'm never ashamed to say I work in politics. And I always say, like, reclaiming the word politics is probably one of the most important things I can do in my lifetime. Because, like you said, it's marred, it's considered to be so dirty, and no one wants to be a politician. People want to be doctors, engineers, IAS officers, teachers. But very few of us want to be politicians. And if we think of role models or examples, we say it's either Gandhi, Nehru, or whoever we look up to in the past. One of my professors said that every generation needs to fight for its own freedom. And a corollary for us then is that every generation needs to have its own leader. And so what we try to do is nurture, or what we hope to do, I would not say that we've done any of that yet. What we hope to do is nurture role models and help people become these role models. People want to be cricketers because they have a Sachin Tendulkar to look up to, who is really symbolizing the qualities of excellence and spirit that one needs to be a cricketer, for example. But can we have politicians of this generation who are so amazing that people look up to them and say, I want to be this person? So part of ISD's work is to curate these stories. If you asked me 2 years ago, before I started doing this work, I would be hopeless about the state of the country, what is happening. But because I'm in this field, I meet such amazing positive deviants. Like, I know a Sarpanch in Bihar who contested her election in 18,000 rupees in an unreserved seat and has made her village defecation free. Like, I just know of examples. So my job is to put these examples out there and also help create these success stories of principled leadership, so that people have role models to look up to who really are redefining politics and reclaiming it and really using it as a vehicle for public service of the highest order. So yeah, that's the attempt. So I think that's how I motivate myself. On the motivation field, I think my one-line answer is that all of us tell stories to ourselves. Like, what the North Star is a story we tell ourselves, and we just need to be convinced of the story that we are telling ourselves so that we can then convince other people. Human brain is just designed that way. So might as well tell a very amazing, inspiring story.
Thanks, Hemakshi. Anyone else would want to maybe take that question?
I just
basically about motivate. Yeah, sorry.
Just have, again, in terms of numbers, Mahamaya, just a parting comment, right? We're in a very poor country. When it comes to per capita GDP, we're perhaps 139 on that list of all countries. So, one of those times where you're like, acha, per capita GDP matters more than GDP. And if we look at the number of organizations, we have about 63 million registered enterprises, but only about 12 million who pay GST. So most of us, no one pays taxes, most of us don't pay taxes. What that really means is, this is a time for a lot of small organizations, MSMEs, for a lot of startups, for a lot of impact-driven organizations to step up and try and affect change at a bigger scale. And perhaps organizations such as ours matter more now than they ever did, be it in terms of contribution, whether it's in the form of data or whether it's in the form of distribution of relief, whether it's in the form of research, writing proposals, informing advocacy. But impact-driven organizations perhaps have such a responsible role to play in these times, that it will be up to a lot of leaders such as those on the panel and to a lot of entrepreneurs to help out, many of whom may not have a say in most of this. So I think, tough times don't last, but I'm hoping that some of these tough times will lead us to more collaboration, better work, and better work at scale in an expedited fashion.
Yeah, thanks, Prerna. I think we've more or less covered a lot of the questions that we had. So what I can quickly do is, what I'm going to do is take a quick feedback poll from the audience, and then maybe everyone could just give closing comments before we wrap this up. So I'm just launching the poll. Ridula, for some reason, I'm not being able to see the feedback poll. Yeah, thank you. Actually, while the audience is doing the poll, we can continue since we only have a couple of minutes left. So if anyone would just kind of like to close, any parting thoughts, anything to inspire young people who might be wanting to kind of do different things within the space, anything actually that you'd like to share, would be good to hear. Lost someone. Yes, Karen.
I think working in the social sector, as we just discussed, is a very long-term goal and something that takes a long time to see results. So when I changed my career to work into the field of social entrepreneurship, one thing that really helped me was to surround myself with people that have the same beliefs and the same ideas, because that helps you drive and helps you to motivate. And I think maybe that's something I could give as my 5 cents for somebody that wants to change into the sector or wants to start working in the sector. Surround yourself with the people that have the same purpose and the same beliefs.
Yep. Thanks, Karen. Anyone else?
I think, Mahamaya, we don't take enough care of ourselves. And I think this forced pause button, everybody takes on a lot of stress, and you kind of get, I think it's really important to create that space for yourself and give yourself time off to say it's okay that I don't have to solve everything 24 hours a day all the time, right? And this is every single person, and I think this has made us closer as people, whether you're friends, family, colleagues. And I think, I hope that spirit of reconnecting to another human doesn't die in whatever context, right? I think the personal side of it is also equally important as the professional side of what we've all been doing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's very interesting that you say that, because, I've found that I've got friends in different parts of the country or the world, and somehow we never actually would end up speaking. It's only when they came down to Delhi that we'd meet, and that would be maybe once a year. And now suddenly we're doing, because everyone was doing Zoom calls, suddenly we're doing Zoom calls once a week, and it's just like, oh my God, why didn't we do this all these years? Why were we waiting for that time to physically meet? So it's really interesting, this whole aspect of reconnecting going forward. And you're right. I hope that stays. I think before we go to others for closing comments, I'll just quickly share the poll results. I think overall, we've kind of got strongly agree for most of the questions that we have. So I'm hoping that it has been useful to our audience as well. Have you guys managed to see the results? And I'll just close this. Okay, sorry, whoever was going next. Anita, is that you?
Yeah, I think I'll say that I think life is full of ups and downs. These are going to happen. I think we should surround ourselves with people who understand us and can support us. And I think beyond that, we have to deal with what is given or thrown our way, right, individually or as an organization or as humanity in this case. So I think we all have it in us to adapt and cope, and I think people around us can help. So I think that would be my one suggestion, that it's okay. These kind of things will happen and we'll get beyond, we'll learn, we'll be different, hopefully we'll be better.
Yes, that's a hopeful way to also think about this, and I hope that's the case. I think I'm already seeing it in a lot of instances, so that's definitely a hope for the future. Hemakshi, were you going next?
Yeah, I could go. I think one of the questions or one of the categories of people were people who want to work in the social sector. So I just want to say, I don't think it's that easy. I think often people from private sector move to the development sector thinking that there may be more balance, that it may be easy. So just account for that. Speak to people. Yes, it's really fulfilling, and I don't think I would undo any of my personal life choices, and I know many friends as well, but it's not easy. So accounting for that and bringing the same level of discipline, rigor that other sectors require, I think is also something to really consider. And I feel very passionate about making this space as rigorous, as excellence driven as the other spaces of the world.
Thank you. I think, Usha, would you like to give your closing or parting comments, thoughts?
Sure. The internet gods were smiling on me until the last 10 minutes. In case I get cut off, I apologize in advance. I think the closing comment I want to leave us all with is this too shall pass, because there's already Krithi and Karanth who are proof of that. They are having, they have offices open. They are already beyond this. We will go beyond this. But the request that I have for all those who are attending, as well as the leaders on this, is to not forget what we learned during this phase, because it's easy for us once we pass to rush back to this normal and try to do things the old way, and to at least remember some of the lessons that we learned, some of the things that we saw that should never happen in a civilized world, and that we all have some way or form we can impact that, right? So we want to make sure that we remember that and we take that as our gift from COVID to the next.
Thank you so much, Usha. Prerna, would you like to go? I think everyone else has spoken, right?
All right, let me go for it.
Anyway.
I think, COVID-19 will be that one landmark event, Mahamaya, that once it's all behind us, it'll be like ADBC. We'll be our lives pre-COVID and our lives post-COVID. And I think as a lot of women here in leadership capacity, we think that there's a lot in our control. But I think this is a brutal, real example that no, not everything is in our control. COVID-19 will also lead to a massive reset, be it in terms of our personal lives, our family lives, or our professional lives. And as resilient people, we will learn to live with it, to get on with it. But my wish to a lot of impact-driven, startup, data-led, younger organizations is that I think it's about survival mode right now. So don't be too hard on yourself. Be very realistic about the numbers and keep your eye on the prize, which is just getting through this, and we'll deal with all else later. So I would like to close on that note.
Great, thank you so much. And with this, I think I would just like to take this opportunity to really thank all of you. I think it's been a really engaging discussion, and it's so great to hear so many different experiences and different voices, but all ultimately, really coming onto certain key common themes that emerge from all the conversations, which is a hopeful one actually, and it's good to end the day on a overall hopeful note. So talking about empathy and just the greater connection, leadership qualities, and really trying to see what it would take to be a good leader going forward. I think the whole idea around innovation and persistence, and knowing that I have to do this, and then just kind of figuring out how it needs to get done. So that kind of commitment and passion that all of you have, and a lot of other leaders in the space have. And I think just the discipline and rigor, and really trying to make what we do count, and constantly reevaluate it, measure it, make sure we are doing better and better, and just move forward with that. So really, thank you all so much. And I hope we stay connected post this. It's been great talking to all of you. Have a good weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. And to our audiences who are here, thank you so much for joining in as well. And I hope you had a useful session and you enjoyed some of the conversations that we had. If any of the questions remain unanswered, we will try and get back to you within a week with some of those answers. Yes, so with that, I close the session. And if anyone's interested in the education space, then we have our Future of Education session on the 3rd of July. So you can visit our website and check that out, www.arthanevents.com. And thank you so much. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.